Sherm Chester along with Roger Brown from the New Hampshire Football Report on this edition of the Seacoast Sports Forum. And, we teed it off last week, Roger. The season is underway in fall sports, but in particular football. We'll focus on that. And I'm out of the box. Any surprises?
Well, I mean, I was surprised a little bit by Timberlane's performance against Exeter, taking the Bluehawks right down to the wire. I wasn't at the game. I watched it, the replay, but especially when Exeter had them down, usually they put their foot on your throat and it's over. But very impressed with how Timberlane battled back, and Exeter was fortunate to win that one, so you got to give them credit there. They put together the drive that they needed at the end of the game, so that was a surprise. I was very surprised by Portsmouth's margin of victory over Dover, 35-0. That might be the biggest mystery in the state to me. Not surprised that Portsmouth won, but didn't expect that type of score, and certainly didn't expect Dover to get shut out. And I think those were the two biggest surprises for me in D1. So they're both in the East Conference.
Anything in any of the other divisions that kind of said, whoa?
Yeah, I mean, there was one game between John Stark and Merrimack Valley in Division 2 I thought was kind of a toss-up going in, and John Stark beat him 40-0. So, came away surprised by that score and that margin of victory, a game that I thought would be competitive. And I guess a little surprised, Keene, how well they played against Goffstown. They switched quarterbacks this year, and the kid that they put at quarterback for, I guess it was Friday night's game, Braden French, had a terrific performance, both running and passing. So just a little surprised by Keene's ability to perform so well offensively in week one with new personnel.
The game, going back to that Timberlane-Exeter game, the thing that surprised me, back-to-back passes that didn't work, and we gave them the ball on our territory. So did you see that, and what was your take on it?
I think I did. I've always said Exeter passes when they can pass. When they've had guys who can throw it, like last year with Mike Karen, they're not a 4-wide spread team, but they throw it 12 times a game, which is a lot given their offense. And, if you can, I'm sure he called the play he thought gave him the best chance to get the first down. So he must have confidence in the passing game this year as well, although it sounds like it didn't work out. Just think about how much more difficult they are to defend when they are capable of moving the ball through the air like they showed on that last drive.
That's true. I mean, they had two decent drives in that game, and came up with touchdowns. And another thing that was a surprise and a good one, the Bishop kid came in for John Adams to fill in as the kicker, and this kid has a foot. Bishop has a foot. He put in a field goal and all the points after. So it gave some hope in the kicking department that, having lost Adams, we've got this kid Bishop that can step into that role and hopefully have success, because that is key too. I mean, that was one thing that Timberlane didn't have, was a kicker. The Bluehawks don't pass from the shotgun. We go under center. And most of these teams that I've been watching, and I watched the replay of the Dover-Portsmouth game, the quarterbacks are doing it from the shotgun.
It makes sense for Exeter to be under center because they're going to do a lot of play action pass. Their run game is so heavy they're going to, fake it to a back and then roll out and throw it. That's where it really makes sense for them to do that, because they're going to trick the defense that way. Just like UNH, when they had Lobby, was under center a lot for that same reason. Play action passing game becomes a factor when you can do that. Not that you can't do it out of the shotgun, but that's not what Exeter's offense is. They are a bit under center. So to me, that makes sense. To the kicking game, that's one thing. Sticking with Exeter, you can be sure of every year that Coach Ball is going to enter the season with a competent kicker, above average kicker usually. And I know there's a limited amount of time for teams to prepare for the season. And some people just aren't blessed with kickers. Maybe there's not one in the school, but I'm puzzled by why he can find one even when his regular kicker is hurt. And so many other teams look like they don't even practice the kicking game. As you mentioned, Sherm, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And when I say kicking game, I'm talking about even like snaps on punts and things like that. These little things.
Mm-hmm.
That Dover-Portsmouth game, Portsmouth scored its first TD because Dover, had a bad snap from punt formation on its first drive, and I think they got the ball inside the 10, and you just got to find ways to work on your kicking game. I don't know if you say, "Hey, Sherm, you're going to be our kicker this year." We don't start practice until whatever date, but the field is open, and take the snapper and the holder with you. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think that with Exeter, I know, having talked to the coaching staff over the years, they usually look to the soccer team for somebody that's got a strong foot there. I mean, just being able to get into that ball and put it between the uprights, that I would assume all schools have. The ones that we're dealing with have soccer teams, but I guess I don't know. Maybe they just don't want to bring the kid over or a kid over.
Yeah, there's probably some soccer coaches that don't want to share. I do know there are some schools that do use soccer players, and it's a good resource if you can. Sometimes there's conflicts in games and whatnot, but you just got to find one in the school. If I was a kid, maybe I wasn't all that thrilled with all the contact of football. I might still want to be a kicker.
Yeah.
Back to UNH for a minute. Look what the kid did last week: 4 field goals, won him a game. I mean, you can earn a scholarship that way too.
Sure.
If that's if your goal is to play. But I don't know. It just seems to me like you could take a kid and he could become a competent kicker. I'm not saying anything fantastic, but at least make extra points on a consistent basis. Even if he never kicked before, just give him a summer. Say, hey, spend some time this summer. Be ready to go once practice starts, and we'll go from there.
There's a new camp for you, brother.
Well, there's plenty of those. I don't want to tell you about my brief kicking career, Sherm. That wouldn't be good. It'd be entertaining if we had film of it, though. I'll tell you that.
Well, I tell you, I think it's like you just said. It's something you have to have confidence. You have to practice, and again, it's pressure, obviously, because especially as a field goal, point after attempts are usually a chip shot, but the field goals, especially the one we had in that game the other night against Timberlane, the kid has a foot, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, and even the extra points, like the kid may be able to kick them, but I can't tell you how many times I see the snap not make it to the holder. I'm talking about the whole process of the kick, not just the kicker. And I go to a lot of games and I see just horrendous special teams early in the season. Kids punts that go nowhere, snaps go over the punter's head. Can't execute a field goal, and again, I understand it's not the pros or even college. You have limited time, but I think I would devote more time to the kicking game because I see a lot of games won and lost in that area, especially early in the year. And in the same vein, kick return game, Justin Huft, who's now the coach at Alvern, he's got a bit of a tricky kick return that he's known for, that he used when he was at Goffstown and then a little bit last year at Pelham. But, it's a great weapon. They score all the time on kickoff returns because they don't just grab it and run left, run right, or run up the center. They put a little more work into it, and they come up with a lot of big plays and tilt the field in terms of field position on their kickoff return. So, it is a third of the game, and it shows, in the win-loss record, I think.
And I think that also there are certain players, and we've seen them over the years, that are naturals. I mean, they can like on the kickoff returns, they can see the field, see that gap, see that seam, whatever the term you want to use, and find it and go for it and make good things happen. Dylan Lowby over at UNH was a good example of that.
Sure. Yep.
Oh, there again. We're going to get back to him in a minute, but I want to stay with the high school thing. Bluehawks take on Portsmouth this week. So Portsmouth had a big game against Dover. Does that mean the Bluehawks are in for a contest, or what's your take there?
I think so. Yeah, I would say yes. It takes a couple of weeks for things to shake out, and you got to compare results and whatnot. But based on what I saw out of Exeter last week, plus Portsmouth's good performance, plus the fact that they're playing in Portsmouth, I wouldn't be surprised if that one goes right down to the wire. Could go either way.
Okay. All right. Now, the other matchups, and I'm looking at the top teams on if folks go to the New Hampshire footballreport.com, they get the Union Leader power poll. Basically, the top 10 stayed the same this week, correct?
For the most part, it's the same. We didn't have a lot of terrific week one matchups. I didn't think going into it. And there were very few upsets, if any, really, amongst the top teams. So it's pretty much unchanged.
The top five remain the same. Pinkerton number one, Bedford number two, Nashua South three, Londonderry was fourth, and the Bluehawks were number five. This week, Salem six, Girton seven, Sauhegan eight, Manchester Memorial nine, and the Portsmouth Oyster River Clipper Cats came in 10th position. When they're going to be meeting up against Timberlane this week, and they had a victory in their first game. But I think they're going to have a challenge with the Timberlane Owls. I really do. I think Timberlane will probably be coming out a little hungry, and so I hope the Warriors are ready.
Yeah, no, I was impressed with Timberlane. Obviously the receiver Santosuaso is very good. I think he had 12 catches or something like that against Exeter. Quarterback looked good, Fitzgerald. I thought, again, I didn't get to see the whole game, but they didn't appear to be overmatched up front, which is often the case when they play Exeter. That's where the Bluehawks have their big edge. They're usually bigger, but I would say of all the games I saw, and I between highlights and replays and live streaming and all that, Timberlane was probably the most impressive team I saw in a loss. In a losing effort, if that makes sense. I came away thinking a lot more of them after the loss than I did going into that game. So, yeah when I think it's going to have its hands full for sure.
Oh, I do too. I think it'll be a close one. I think I'm leaning towards the Owls getting a little, revenge after having lost the first one. Now, the one I think, and I don't know if you're going to be covering this one, of course, Bedford, the number 2 seed against number 3 Nashua South. Tell us about Nashua South. They obviously are on the upswing, and they're going to have their hands full with Bedford, number 2.
Yeah, I will be there for Nashua. South is their skill position players are the same guys that were there 2 years ago. The quarterback, Cody Jackson, is a third-year starter. Running back, Sam Levine, third-year starter. Josh Tripp, who has an offer from UNH, third-year starter. So we've seen this coming. The question for them is how are they going to be up front offensively? Is their offensive line going to hold up against the better teams? And, defending Bedford is still going to be a tall task, especially Bedford's running game. So, the question mark in my mind going into the game is how well is South going to perform on defense? I would make Bedford throw the ball. It was easier said than done, but devote more guys, I guess, to run defense. And, you got to pick your poison, so to speak. But I think South will be able to score, put up points in this game. It's just a matter, can they get enough stops to pull off, I guess, what would be a mild upset?
And Bedford has Helton that's a beast, and again, stop him. That's going to be, like you just said, the defensive moves are going to matter in that game.
Yeah, they got Helton, but now they've got Bennett Matthews has moved to quarterback, who they might be the top 2 running threats in the state, and they're both in the same backfield. They combined for close to 400 yards last week on the ground, the two of them. So, Helton back there by himself is hard enough to stop, but now you got 2 guys you got to worry about, both of whom are Division I athletes. They're both going to go play Division I lacrosse. So yeah, again, it comes back to how tough is Nashua North going to, or Nashua South going to be, defensively. At least that's what I think the key is going to be in that game. But Bedford's defense is going to get tested too. I mean,
Sure.
that South offense is terrific. If they can get, adequate protection for Jackson, might be a shootout. So
Give me a score. Give me a score. Come on.
score of Bedford?
Bedford and South. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say let's go like 30, Bedford 34, South 28, something like that. I just think the offenses are going to be too good in this game.
UNH, the Wildcats, did they surprise you winning 2 in a row? Not one, but 2 in a row?
Yeah, you got to be surprised based on what they lost, Sherm. I mean, they had one starter coming back on defense and he's barely played. So through 2 games, they've given up two defensive touchdowns because one of the Holy Cross TDs came on an interception return. And the offense, it hasn't been great, but it's done just enough so far. They're going to have to get better for sure. So, I mean, you always take 2-0, but especially in their situation when they had so many unknowns coming into the season. And I think they've been winning the way they're going to have to win this year, which is, I mean, the days of them scoring 40 or whatever every game or a lot are probably, I wouldn't say they're over, but not this season. And they're going to have to win with defense, going to need more out of their offense, but the kicking game, defense, just like the Holy Cross game, low scoring, fairly low scoring anyways. And the kicker looks terrific, by the way. Like Nick Reed, he hit 4, one of them from 50, and it had plenty to spare, but his kickoffs were just as impressive. So that's definitely going to be a strength of the team, their kicking game. Again, that was an uncertainty coming in. They lost Nick Mazzy, and, nothing against Nick. He was terrific, but they may have improved in that area, with the kid they brought into transferring from Buffalo. So, surprise, yes, 2-0, and beat 2 good teams as well. It wasn't like they opened with a soft schedule.
Right, and now they're legit by getting notice in the top 25 of the FCS. That was impressive too.
Yeah, and they're playing Ball State, which is up a level FBS program. But the last time they played Ball State, they beat them. That's a program they've beaten in the past. And, the people out in Vegas make point spreads on these things. And I think I saw UNH as a slight favorite.
Wow.
Could be wrong about that, but, at least one place opened them up as, I think a point favorite or something. So if they were to win this one, I think their stock would really go up, especially in the top 25.
I think you and I kicked it around earlier, before the season started, that, Coach Santos is a young coach and he's got a young team. And I think that helps. He can relate to those guys and they can relate to him too. And he knows he's got to build, he's got to keep it on a positive slant, because if they had lost that first game, it would have made that Holy Cross game so much more important. And winning the first game against the North Carolina Central, that kind of gave him a boost going into Holy Cross. So it's a good trajectory they're on. That's, I guess, my bottom line.
Yeah, and that Holy Cross game is a big one because they cross paths a lot on the recruiting trail. That's become a pretty good rivalry the last few years. They met in the playoffs, I believe, a couple of years ago, and it's been back and forth. Holy Cross got the best of them, a few years ago, but it's an important win because they're 2 of the top programs at their level in the Northeast, and you're fighting for a lot of the same players, recruiting wise. So the other thing is Scott James, who took over as UNH's defensive coordinator this year. He's a Marshwood guy, was a coach at Holy Cross. So I'm sure he was extra motivated to win that game Saturday night.
Move on to the pros real quick. First week of the NFL season, any surprises there for you?
Oh, God, yeah. I guess trying to think back to what happened. I guess Denver game being closer uh, than I expected. I thought they would win comfortably. Um, not that I was surprised, but boy, that Buffalo
Oh,
Baltimore
yeah.
game was terrific, huh?
That was an eye opener. I gave up on it. I have to admit, I gave up on it. 4 minutes left, it's over, and son of a gun.
I just want to make a quick statement. I put this on, so I don't understand how NFL coaches struggle so much with when to go for two and when not to go for two.
Sure.
It's I'm terrible at math, but we're not talking big numbers here. And um, what's the I can't think of the Buffalo head coach's name, but he was lucky to win because he mismanaged it down the end.
Yeah, yeah.
Going for two, I think they were down 9, so he made it a 2-score game, made it much tougher than it needed to be, but they still pulled it out.
One thing about the Patriots game, the only real highlight of that for me was we got to see Dylan Lowby, former UNH Wildcat, as a kickoff returner, and that was kind of cool.
Yeah, played well, and Dylan gets a lot of the attention, as does Brosmer, but Wande Owens, who was at UNH last year, is on the Bills roster. And he was probably, in my eyes, the most impressive UNH player last year.
Yeah.
So I was rooting for him to make an NFL roster, and glad to see he stuck with Buffalo. So, other than that, there was, unless you were rooting for the Raiders, it was not a great performance. But really, they just need to stay competitive and win some close games. Is what just like. I root for it's like the season when Parcells made them competitive. Every week you went into it hoping they were going to win. And, usually they hung around and found a way at the end. And that's the way it's going to be this year. You're just not going to, they got too many questions, I think.
Hunter Long with the Jacksonville Jaguars gets his
TD catch. Yep. Super.
It's a TD with Trevor Lawrence. I hope that's first of many. I was very impressed that he finally goes to a team that may be able to use him.
Yeah, well, you'd think the Rams would have used him, with their offense and their passing ability, but just never wasn't a good fit for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that this Trevor Lawrence has a lot to prove because I think he had that phenom status when he first was drafted, and it didn't really happen for him or for the Jaguars. So maybe now that he's got a young guy like Hunter that is hungry and wants to catch some balls and make some points, there you go, made in heaven, match made in heaven. 2-minute drill time. Anything you want to throw on the table?
Yeah, I do. Just a lot of people maybe around here aren't super familiar with Chris Sanborn, who's the head coach at Plymouth Regional, football coach there. He's coached the Shrine team a couple years ago, and he was a Chuck Lenahan's top assistant. He's well known and well respected in the high school football community. Ask people to keep him in your thoughts. His wife is dealing with a serious health issue. Don't like to end with bad news, but it's he's going through a tough time. I don't think he's back to coaching yet, but hopefully things will get better there and he'll be back on the sideline soon. Fingers crossed.
In our thoughts, and we're thinking positive. Okay, we'll think positive. It was funny the other night at the game. Stan Bruno was looking through the official program, and he says, "Hey, you're in it." And I said, "What?" And sure enough, on page 37, the boosters put a little blurb in with my photo in it. So thank you to the football boosters for the sentiment they put in the program. And it was funny because I get the program, and all I'm looking for really is the lineups and also for future games and the sponsors, because we acknowledge the sponsors during the game. And so thank you again to the boosters and to the sponsors of Bluehawk football too. We'll be talking about them at the game, and next game for them at home is going to be on the 27th. And that is against Winnicott, the homecoming game. That'll be, and I want to mention this, New Hampshire Tackles Hunger Game. That's a game where you bring in a non-perishable item and get free admission to the game. All those items will be going to the St. Vincent de Paul Food Pantry, the one right here in Exeter, and all throughout the state. the different teams are having the New Hampshire Tackle Hunger Games for the next month. And please, if you could, donate any item, canned goods, anything non-perishable. It's going to a great cause. The local food pantries that basically are doing God's work.
Congrats to you, Sherm. Well deserved. You should have been in there sooner, but I wrote a little bit last week about how some of these football programs that are struggling, how important it is for the whole community to support football. Um, and that includes boosters and local businesses and whatnot. And I was always, as I've mentioned on this show before, very impressed when my son went through the program with, I shouldn't say impressed. I was blown away really with how much the boosters did. So, kudos to them as always.
And I want to also put a shout out on the same page I share with Sandy Healy and Jenny Bishop, the team photographers. They're always there, always making sure we have at the end of the season a video presentation for the team, and it's always
terrific. I've seen several.
Oh yeah, they do a great job. And also another thing, before we sign off here, I want to congratulate the coach and Rich Kane and your son Nick Brown for their debut performance on 98.7 Frank FM, the soundtrack of the seacoast. The Bluehawk games now are on Bluehawk Media. So that's on YouTube, so you can visually watch the games and live and or after the fact streaming. Then you can listen to it live, night of games, on 98.7 Frank FM. Matter of fact, I got a chance to sit down after the game with Coach Rich Kane, and we talked about the upcoming Exeter Bluehawk action. Now you got Portsmouth, the Clipper Cats coming up next, and Londonderry. Those are two good teams coming up before we get to Winnicott, which is our next home game.
I don't think we're going to have any quote gimmies in this schedule. Timberlane came out tough. Portsmouth will be just like them. They can throw it again. And then Londonderry is Londonderry. They're going to be tough all around. So we're going to have to be prepared for them. But Coach, he'll go through this film, him and the staff, and they'll figure out what they can do better and where they need to make some adjustments.
That is Coach Rich Kane, part of the team that brings you Bluehawk football on both Bluehawk Media, on YouTube, and Frank 98.7, the soundtrack of the seacoast all season long. Well, that does it. So on behalf of Rich Kane and Roger Brown from HampshireFootballReport.com, this is Sherm Chester inviting you to join us for the next edition of the Seacoast Sports Forum podcast.